For a lot of people, single cask whiskey is the holy grail, the boss fight of whiskey. But it quite often comes with a price tag. But what if I told you you could get a single cask whiskey for only £20, less than £20? Welcome back, Dram Fam, to the Whisky Diary. Yeah! So I'm not really going to beat around the bush with this. I had a different episode planned for today, but I had a delivery. And when I dug into that delivery and tasted the liquid inside it, I had to make a video about it. This actually popped up on my radar from a couple of friends of mine that had noticed this particular online retailer was bottling their own whiskey. Now, they've done this before under other brand names, but not necessarily under their own online retail brand name. And I thought that's an interesting take. So I took a punt when I saw this particular bottle because it was outrageously cheap for a single cask whiskey. Now, single cask whiskey is a whiskey where the entire contents of that bottle have come from a single cask. Quite often, a distillery will vat a number of casks together, and they will, so to get like a consistency between them, and then they will bottle from those casks. That's often where you get it like watered down and stuff like that. So, but this has come from one single cask into bottles. I think they got 314 bottles from this particular cask. So without further ado, this is a 6-year-old Speyside from the Speyside Distillery. It is from the region, but it's from the Speyside Distillery. That's been bottled by Master of Malt. Now, this has been bottled at 40%. Despite it being a single cask, it has been knocked down to 40%. It is unchill filtered. It is all natural colour, in case you hadn't noticed. It is absolutely unpeated. It mentions the cask type is refill. We can only assume that's a refill bourbon cask, standard issue whiskey as it were. And what's really interesting about this is £19.95 from Master of Malt with free delivery. Now, I've tried a number of bottlings by Master of Malt, but not under the Master of Malt brand. They are owned, their parent company is called Atom. They produced that Christmas cake and medjool dates and whatever else. I gave that a stunning review because I think that's a fantastic whiskey. So clearly someone there knows what they're doing when it comes to bottling whiskey. This particular bottling is from the Speyside Distillery. It is called the Speyside Distillery. It's in the Speyside region. It's odd because it's actually, to me, it looks like it's more of a Highland distillery, but that's by the by. It is actually on the banks of the Spey, so we'll allow it. They produce Spey whiskey. There is the Spey 10E, which I've had before. I don't mind it. It's alright. I've actually pulled a drop out here to AB it. It's alright. It's nothing life-changing, but it's good whiskey for a relatively affordable price. The reason that this bottle is quite so exciting is because it's a single cask. Usually you would expect to pay a premium for a single cask whiskey, but it's a £20 single cask. Like, that's insane. You explain that to someone, they're going to be like, what are you talking about? So that's why I got it. That's why it's intriguing. And that's why I decided to review it. There's nothing really of note about this other than the fact it is very pale, even more so in a glass. There is absolutely no colour to it whatsoever, but I'll get into that at the end of the review. So, let's get on to tasting it. I wasn't joking about the colour. It almost looks like vodka in a glass. But on the nose, very light and fruity. Now, I'm a big fan of new make spirit. This is new makey, and that's not a bad thing. It's got some notes of sweet mint, a little bit of raspberry going on in there as well. And like fruitiness, for me it's a melon-like fruitiness. It actually very much reminds me of like pre-mixed canned cocktails, like a watermelon daiquiri or something like that. Like, it's nice and sweet. It's got a bit of a mintiness going on, slight fruitiness, really nice like watermelon note. Doesn't really smell very much like a kind of whiskey. It's a lot lighter, a lot fruitier. I mean, it smells like a whiskey, but it sits right on that kind of extreme end. Incredibly light onto the palate. Now, despite it being down at 40%, it doesn't feel like too watery texture-wise. It's still got that slight effervescence, which ties in nicely actually to my kind of first taste note. It tastes like sparkling water, like that taste of carbon dioxide dissolved into water. It's really nice. It's really quite refreshing. A nice honeydew melon sweetness coming through. Actually, quite a lot sweeter now. What you call it, the mid palate. Getting some nice cereal notes starting to come through now. You can really kind of get the barley coming in, and I get notes of like sweetened condensed milk. Like, it's not quite toffee. It's not like a deep enough sweetness. It's like a very light sweetness, but there's a toffee-like quality, and for me that kind of manifests as like a sweetened condensed milk. Finish-wise, it's light, it's short, kind of what you'd expect from a 6-year-old whiskey anyway, especially one which has clearly not had that much cask influence. That melon kind of hangs around a bit. Some of those sweet mint notes really kind of persist. Starting to get a little bit of white chocolate coming through. And if you ever remember, very specifically those Campino sweets, they were like a pinwheel round sweet. They did a peach flavour. Getting some really nice. It's not peach. It is not peach. It's like peach flavoured creamy sweets. And lastly, right on the back, kind of revisiting, getting a bit of a coconut kind of thing going on there, like a Malibu, you know, like Malibu and pineapple, like a sweet coconut flavour. So with all that being said, it really does beg the question, what do I think of it? I love it, but I don't like it the way that I like so many of my other whiskies. This for me is not something that you really need to like sit and work through and chew through. You can drink this really, really nice and easily, and the flavours aren't deep and bold. This is bottled down at 40%, and you'll very rarely find me say that there is a whiskey that I find has got the intensity of flavour and the excitement when it's down at 43 and below. But because this has got such a unique flavour profile, I don't think I'd like this any higher than 40. It's probably, it would be too spirity if it was up there. Fundamentally, I find this really, really exciting. It's very much at the extreme end, where you've got things like the Falls of Caledonia, which are your big, rich, juicy sultanas, raisins, sherry for days, tons of cask influence. This is the opposite end of the spectrum. This is almost like a naked whiskey. I think as a company, you've got to be really quite brave to put this out. I can imagine a lot of whiskey drinkers turning their nose up at this immediately, but I think it comes down to what type of whiskey drinker you are. I drink whiskey because I love it. I'm excited by it. The variety, the spectrum of flavours, the magic that happens like behind the scenes. And I think if you're like me, this is a peek behind the curtain. This is like almost tasting what whiskey is as a work in progress. That excites me. Now, if you're like a lover of big sherry bombs, 12 years minimum, it's got to be in a PX or whatever else, this just isn't for you. This is not going to have the flavours that you look for in a whiskey. But if you are a whiskey drinker that enjoys the experience and the experiment behind whiskey, I think you'll quite enjoy this. As I say, for a company, it's quite counterintuitive. I mean, even for me as a whiskey drinker, it's quite counterintuitive that I would like this. 40%, super young. The palate is not like a standard whiskey palate. This is got some really quite mild, delicate, out there notes for me compared to a lot of the whiskies that I usually enjoy. But I can't help but really enjoy drinking it, which for me is a sign of a good whiskey. So yeah, Master of Malt, keep it up. It's really piqued my interest into what the rest of the range, because I know they've done a number of bottlings, so I think I'm going to be checking those out and seeing what I think of what else they have to offer. But anyway, that's enough from me. Thank you all very much for watching. If you've liked this video, please do drop a like down below, and if you'd like to support the channel, please do consider subscribing. Let me know down in the comments if you've tried any of these Master of Malt single cask bottlings, or if you're considering getting this, having seen this review. And on that note, Slàinte mhath.